Our guest for this session is Lorraine Butler. She is currently the Managing Director of CPM Ireland and the first female to lead this large field marketing and sales agency. Lorraine was named CEO of the Year at the annual Image Businesswoman of the Year Awards in 2019. She is a graduate of DIT, where she holds a BA in Computer Science and Technology Management, and also holds an MSc in Business Leadership and Management Practice from UCD Smurfit Business School. Lorraine, a great welcome to the Mindset Shift and thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Tim.
So before we get into the sort of technical stuff that really we'll chat about later on, I'd like to find out a bit about Lorraine Butler and, your background outside Rossmore Collection and just a bit about you, your upbringing and, what you wanted to do when you were young and how that turned out for you as life went on.
Okay, so I am a country girl. So I was born and reared in County Laois, and I've moved back about 7 years ago back from Dublin to County Laois. So I'm one of 7 girls. So there's 7. Once upon a time there was 8 of us, but there's 7 of us now. I'm the oldest of all of the girls. So,
okay.
Again, country family, went to school locally and then moved into Carlow, into a convent school to do my secondary education. Always wanted to be a teacher. Just all I ever wanted to do. Everything I did in school was to study to be a teacher. And then I went to UCD and I absolutely hated it. So yeah, I did a year and a half in arts in UCD. And took all, great learnings from that, I suppose, that I've taken into life in business, because I learned pretty quickly that my environment is so important to me. And I've gone from a country school, which was quite large at 1,200 girls, to my class having 1,400 in the class, and it really didn't suit me. So I went back and I started from scratch again, started computer science, something completely different in a class of 40. And that really suited me, that environment, and it helped me grow to where I am today. It was a good foundation for me.
So tell me about growing up with 7 sisters. Had you any brothers?
No. Okay, no, well, my father's a farmer, so that didn't go down too well to him. I think they were trying, but they gave up after 8 of us, But it was great, I think what Mum and Daddy gave us was a great foundation, great environment, So they were farmers, and I think we had a great family life with them. So just really an environment of love and support. And it was tough growing up, to be fair. If anybody who's worked on a farm knows how tough that is. But I think what we got from Mommy and Daddy was a great, inspiration to hard work does pay off. Integrity is absolutely core to how my parents reared us. And I suppose I was the oldest of the girls, so there was a little bit more pressure on me to be the good girl, I think, and to lead by example for the rest of them to follow me. And I hope I did that. But I would say that I think the reason why we were all able to have done so well was because we saw the lives my mother and father had lived, and they left school at 12 and 13, just different times.
Yep.
And I knew that they always, they love hearing about our stories and us, what happens in school or in work. And I sort of realised earlier on that my mum and dad were nearly living their life that they could have had through us. So that really spurred me on to probably make them proud, to be honest. And then for all of our sisters to try and do the same. So I think every day, even now, I talk to Mum and Daddy every single day, and they still want to know what to do in work today. And I'll still tell them what I did in work today. And I think they're delighted that they gave us the environment that they couldn't have themselves because of time. They came from loving environments too, but just the opportunities weren't there for them at their time. And they've given us all those opportunities now. And we've made the most out of them, I hope.
What I love is the word integrity, because obviously that shines through, Lorraine, even at this early stage. But the fact that your parents in the farming community, at a different time, as you say, but that was a big thing that they passed on. Obviously, love and affection comes through as well. The fact you still talk to them every day, and the pride that they had in you, and that as you say, and your sisters, that maybe they lived their ambitions through your successes, but it's the pride and to pass on integrity is really a special word to have been passed on from our parents.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. I think. Like Mum and Daddy would always say, don't ever say anything bad about somebody, I don't open your mouth unless you've got something positive to say. And that is because, the impact you can have on a person is fundamental, good or bad. And I'd like to think that, we'd leave a positive impact as a family behind us when people engage with us. And I would take that into work. So I am pretty much similar at home as I am at work. And so I bring myself to the office, to be honest, and I try to do that. When I'm hiring my team or selecting my team, I try and make sure that integrity is absolutely core to everything that they do, and they can be their real selves with their people, because it does shine through, and it's critical to everything we do.
It's interesting because my parents are from the city, God rest their souls, they passed on now. And so I wouldn't know what it was like to go up in the farm because I'm a city slicker. So we would always have thought the farmers had the easy life. And obviously the farming community thought the city slickers had the easy life. But my parents would have been very similar in that, I always remember my mother had a saying, which was, your left hand should never know what your right hand has given to anybody. And when I was young, I couldn't understand it. It was the fact that respect that, some people have come into tough times. And if you do something, do it for all the right reasons. So there was an integrity about that, philosophy she had, and obviously similar to your parents. And what's interesting is how you, as the eldest, now I was the middle child, but you're the eldest, how you felt that you had to show the way for your siblings as well as show the way for your parents. And just talk to you about the challenge there, because that's a challenge.
Yeah, do you know what? I never realised it was a challenge. It's just now when you get older and you're thinking back about your life and you're trying to make rhyme or reason of it, that you realise that there was a responsibility there, But like I was, there's 14 years between me and my youngest sister. So I basically had to help my mum rear the kids. So I was farmed out at night time when a new baby was born home from the hospital. So it was pretty intense, but there was a lot of responsibility on your shoulders from a young age, and I just grew up with it. And I think even when I went to school, I just always ended up being the prefect or the head girl, but it wasn't something I ever sought out. I don't like being in front of a crowd. I'm not comfortable, but if for some reason I end up leading the crowd, if that makes sense. And again, I'm still not comfortable. So these interviews today is not something I'm comfortable with whatsoever. But, I've learned probably earlier on that if integrity is core to me, if I'm honest about how I come across, then, hopefully something will shine through that makes sense to people who are listening, I suppose. And
it's interesting about leadership, because, as you say, in a family sense, you were the leader of the siblings, of the 8 girls, you were the leader. By age initially, because you were the oldest, okay? But also I would get the impression, it became, as your sisters got older, you still maintained that leadership role where age was no longer a relevant factor. But in school, you became a prefect. So I talk a lot about leadership, Lorraine. I'm a great believer in leadership and the difference between leadership and management. And I make the point, there are different type of leaders. And you strike me, the fact that you said, you're not comfortable, in front of people, because people have this stereotypical view. Leaders are charismatic and, they want to be extroverted in front of people all the time. And I'm saying, they're not. There's a combination. You're obviously very charismatic, but you're not an extrovert in that context. Has that been a challenge to you in your professional career as you started to take up leadership roles?
100%. 100%. When I was interviewing for this job, you had to do a psychometric test, and I spent over half of the day with a psychologist. And the results came back pretty clear that I was petrified of being in front of a group of people.
Okay.
And that's always been the case. But yet, at the end of the day, actually, my boss now said to me, he says, Lorraine, you don't have to be it. You just have to do it. Right? And he was spot on. And that made it very simple for me to know that I know you have to do it. Like, I have to be there to lead people. Like, I'm leading a people organization. So they have to have somebody that they can see as that leader and to guide them and direct them. But during that leading, doing interviews like this or other interviews, I absolutely dread them. Right?
Well, you're doing a great job so far, Lorraine.
I can tell you it wasn't a great night's sleep last night, Tim, to be very honest with you. But, at the end of the day, I have to do it because at the same time, I've done really well, I think, in my life and in my career. I'm really proud of where I am. But it was through hard work and it was through doing things that I was not comfortable with. And I do try, when I'm speaking to people who are probably trying to come on that leadership journey, explain to them that I was the very same as them, I am the very same as them, but I just have to put it to one side and say, look, you can do this. And leaders are so important in the business world and in the private world. And we all need leaders. So you have to put your own challenges aside to do what's right and try and be that inspiration sometimes, you know.
And it's interesting that you say that leaders are so important, because I fully concur with that. And leaders and managers are very different. I mean, for me, leaders require courage. They require a passion for what they're at. You know, they require, you know, the ability to communicate and engage with people. They require a determination, you know, and a commitment to whatever they're at. Where managers don't require many of those things. You know, managers, you know, tend to do things. But talk to me about, you went back to DIT, and I'm fascinated with the fact that, you know, the UCD arts class was bigger than the school in Cara. That just is fascinating. So, you know, coming from Killesh and outside Killesh, right? And, you know, which is a small part, you know, a small rural community, to Carlow is a step up into the townies, as they were calling them in Carlow. And then into the big smoke in Dublin, you know, where more people is a challenge. And then you went to DIT. When you left DIT, what was the ambition? What was the journey ahead of you at that point in
time? It's funny because I'd always wanted to be a teacher, you know, and then I went to computer science, which I never wanted to be a teacher in computer science, but I learned in college that I was very good at networking, or the logic of how things worked. So I knew that I wanted to get into something that was quite logical or made sense to me. And when I was in college, I was working in Pizza Hut in Rathmines. So I was putting myself through college for 5 years. I had to pay my rent and whatever, because again, there was, you know, 6 other kids at home that Mommy and Daddy had to look after. And I met 2 people who were regular customers of Pizza Hut. And they came in and they ran a computer company, and they ran a translation software company. And they used to come in once or twice a week. I was their waitress. And I got to know them over time. Again, relationship skills are really important to me. They offered me a job at the end of college. So it was pure luck that I ended up with that job. So I was doing computer science, and they ran a computer company. So it was just really, really fortunate. And that's how I ended up knowing what I wanted to do next. It wasn't by design.
And tell me, obviously one of your sisters has passed on, because obviously there's one, so it's God rest her soul. At what age were you when that happened?
I was 10, and she was very young. She was only a few days old, and she was born with complications, and she only survived a few days. But I was 10, and I still remember the day, and I remember the impact it had, because I was so used to babies often coming home from the hospital at that stage. But Mommy didn't come home for 2 weeks, so I knew something was very different. It still probably lives with all of us still, and all of our sisters to this day. Like, we can try and remember her. Thomasina was her name. But it's probably only in the last 6-7 years that my mom was able to talk about it, to be honest, as well. So it was a really tough time for her, I think.
And very tough, obviously, because as you say, even for you, you're used to mom coming home, you know, with a new baby. Mom doesn't come home for a long time. And as a 10-year-old, that's confusing in its own right. And then on top of that, you know, mom has lost one of her daughters, which is very tragic for any parent. How have you helped your mom in the last few years? Because if she said she's coming to terms now, so she talks about it, you know, as a natural leader. So my impression of you, Lorraine, is that, you know, formed in this meeting now, by the way, is that you have real natural leadership tendencies, and that therefore the reason that you became a leader in different ways is people gravitate towards you because there's a comfort in engaging with you. How have you helped your mom, you know, deal with the challenge, you know, after these number of years, obviously, in not dealing with it as best she could?
I think initially, I think we knew that Mommy wasn't able to talk about it, so we were very practical. There was only one photo of my sister, and she just couldn't look at it. So we had to hide the photo. That was a real practical thing. And then, you know, like, my mom still had to come home, and she had 5 children still to look after. So that was where I had to kick in to help with the looking after of the kids. And my sisters were young, but they also helped. It wasn't just me. You know, we all been together, and we'd loads of cousins and aunties and uncles, and they were fantastic. I think for me, it was more so to watch Mum emotionally. Like, You knew the cues. You knew when she was down. You knew, because she's so positive and so upbeat. And it was to try and take some maybe work off her, to give her a chance to be emotional whenever she needed it to be, even though we never saw it.
Yes.
You knew she just needed that. So I don't know, you just like, I would have a very strong gut feeling about things, I think, and you just follow your gut. You just know your good intuition there when you know something's wrong, and you just step in and get practical about things so that she doesn't have to be.
And tell me about that gut feeling in the professional world, because obviously you've carried that gut feeling on with your career. Has it always helped you?
Yes, always. It's helped me, and I've gone against it a couple of times, and it's been to my detriment, you know?
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know what it is. It's like, I don't know, sometimes I feel it's a bit like a sixth sense. It's very strong. I can just sense things, or I can sense the feeling in a room, or and that's often why I don't want to be in front of a room, because I don't want to sense that.
Okay.
But I don't know. No, it always has stood me really, really well. It's my safety guard, I think. I will sense something, and it'll help me understand how to respond or react.
And when you went against it, you made a point on the occasion you've got against it and it has hurt you. Why would you have went against it? Just, we don't want the detail of what it was, but just...
No, I'll be really honest. Usually it was career-wise, and obviously it was in business, and I made a decision for money. So my salary was going to increase, but I had a feeling that there was something not completely right with the culture of the company I was going to join. So I said, I'd just been made redundant. I needed the money. So I overlooked the sense of having that bit of alarm bells about the culture of the company, because I need the money. And I've never made that same mistake again, because I lasted 6 weeks.
That's a brilliant learning now for people listening to this, right? Because right now we're in a COVID challenge, and we'll talk to you about, the challenges for your organization in this COVID challenge in a few minutes. But we're in this COVID challenge. So when I work with clients, executives and clients, I talk to them about, don't make pressurized decisions. Don't make decisions for the wrong reasons. And you made a point. You had been made redundant. You needed a job. You needed money. And you took the next thing available, even though you had doubts and question marks about what it was that you were going into. And for people right now in COVID challenges and the challenges that COVID has put on us personally and economically, that's a brilliant piece of advice that people should listen to from this podcast, that make the right decision rather than the easy decision. Is that fair?
100%, 100%, because, money is absolutely important, but how you make your money is nearly as important. So how you feel about going about your daily job and your work and beyond today is so, so important, because, our working lives impede on our personal lives so much. You have to be in an environment that's comfortable for you and that you enjoy as much as you possibly can, or you feel secure in. And being financially secure isn't always the answer. Emotionally secure for me outweighs money every day of the week. And you know what? You can't always have both, but sometimes if you're lucky enough, you can. But if you don't have that emotional support from your working environment, it will impact your personal life, and that's not worth any money.
But some people might say, Lorraine, that, people at the top of the executive tree, as you sit today, it's a bit easier for them to say that, emotional security is more important than financial security. How would you respond to that?
I would say, look beyond today. And I completely get it. Like I'm managing a group of 700 people from various salaries, from very, very minimum wage salaries to really strong salaries. I'm not silly, and I've been there myself. And I know exactly where I've come from and how hard it is to get by. I've made the mistake in the past of making decisions for money, and it has not stood me well. But I did learn the lesson from it. And I would say to people, like, stop looking at just today. Look beyond today. Look beyond the end of this pandemic and do what you have to do to get through this pandemic. But don't lose sight of the longer term picture, because this will come and pass. All right. But how you get through it, will stay with you forever. It really will. So I think you can be really, you can get through this as best as you can. But if you can get through this, just holding on, but being stronger at the end of it, I do think people will be even stronger going into the next stage of their journeys in their career and in life.
That's a powerful insight, Lorraine. I have to say, that has just come out of our chat, because there are people right now who are looking to make short-term decisions for short-term reasons. And, to have the the courage. I use the word courage in leadership in awful, because I really believe you cannot be a leader unless you have courage, even though other people might disagree with that. But that's my strong philosophy. And from my own experience, it has helped me in great stead leading organizations.
Can I say one thing as well, Tim, as well? I think people should not forget that leaders are still people.
Absolutely. That's very important.
We've made our journeys and we've made our decisions and we have our challenges, but we're still people. So we can still have a chat with a person at the end of the day. And I think every person should be speaking to their managers, their leaders, and trying to create an environment where you can have an open conversation and be honest. And that's really what I would encourage people to do with their employers. Absolutely would.
And one of the great things that you've said earlier is you made a mistake, because that's what separates leaders, in my view, and managers. Managers are often reluctant to say they made mistakes because they're worried about the implications. Leaders are very comfortable saying they made a mistake. But if I just tease that on then, so we come to the start of 2020 and you're looking forward, you've moved on from your career and now you're running this large organization and it's great year ahead. There's great plans and everything else. And what was it like at the start of the year for you, Lorraine? You just won this Businesswoman of the Year, of course. You just won this big award and now you're starting to 2020, all guns blazing. So talk to me about the start of the year first.
Yeah. Oh, I had great plans. We're going to rule the world, Tim. Great plans. We went in with huge growth plans because we had a great year last year and the year before. And it goes back to, success of today didn't happen because of December last year. It happened because of the hard work of 2 years previous, So we were going to realize a lot of that success this year. That was our plan. And you know what? We will do well this year compared to how we could have, right? We were still going to lose significant money. There's no question about that, right? But we will probably had to pivot a few different areas because of the pandemic, no question about it. And that's probably going to last well into next year, not just this year. So I think.
How did you deal initially with the COVID challenge? When COVID hit initially, you're the leader. So how did you deal initially with that?
Well, the biggest challenge for me was our company, our assets, our people. So we provide people to companies. So because people was the asset and COVID poses the biggest risk to the health and safety of people, that was the biggest worry for us, because we've got people out on the ground engaging in the public, and this pandemic was rife. So that was the biggest challenge for us, the health and safety of our people. And then how you balance that, not even with the company finances, but people's wages. Because if the guys aren't working the way agencies work, you don't tend to get paid by your clients. If we don't get paid, how can we then pay them their wages? And it was trying to get that balancing act and genuinely we didn't care about the company finances at that stage. It was very much protecting our people, because if our people are protected, our business is protected.
Okay.
But on our shoulders was very much, people's mortgages had to be paid, etc. And how we balanced their safety with their finances was a huge challenge for us.
So how did you do that?
We put in really, really strong health and safety measures. So we took the decision, regardless of the financial challenges, the health and safety of our people will always come first. We put really tight safeguards in place just to make sure that people knew how they could and couldn't work and what was and wasn't acceptable for them. And they knew that they had our full support to walk away from any environment. And that stood us well. We haven't had a single case of COVID across the 700 people since the start of the year.
That's a big achievement, though. That's a big achievement.
Yeah, and we've had isolation cases, absolutely, but no proven cases of COVID. And we check in with each other twice a day on those stats. And I think where we did have clients who could not pay us their fees because their business was in decline, we had to put on the government support and leverage the government support. But then we also looked to clients whose business was thriving. So retail was thriving during the pandemic.
Yes.
So we offered the opportunity to people who weren't working to move into different sectors of the business. And you know what? That stood to us really well, because the individuals got a flavour of a different working environment, different experience, different skill set, probably energized a few of them to try something new. And it meant that they could safeguard their wages through the pandemic, which helped them in their personal lives at home.
That's a lot of pivoting, though, isn't it, really, Lorraine? I mean, there's a lot of pivoting going on in what you just described there. How do you control the control of that pivoting? Because that's obviously, as the leader, fundamental.
You have to really, I would always say, watch your management team and make sure that they have the tools, because I can't touch every single person in the organisation. It's just not practical to do that. But I give my management team the tools to be leaders, and they have to step out of management and do management and leadership, even though some of them might be completely comfortable with that, right? So you give them the tools to understand how they can operate in this new world, but you give them the inspiration, I suppose, to say it's going to be okay. We're going to come out of this. You know, they have our support, they have my support. The door is always open for a conversation with them. We check in regularly. But we also, I think we really ask them to dial up their emotional intelligence skills with people on the ground as well, and understand that people are going to change through this pandemic. And they are. Like, I've seen people do things that I never would have expected to see. Their behaviours have become really poor in some instances. And I've seen people really step up and do amazing things, you know. So at the end of the day, people are people. And it's how we identify when that person is struggling, and then how the managers flag that up to us, and me as a leader and the wider HR team, so that we can, you know, keep our finger on the pulse to step in when we need to step in. But if there is a trend emerging that it's happening more and more often, then we have to probably shift more than individual conversations and have collective conversations to make sure that we're stemming the flow of negativity. It can be quite negative sometimes.
In my own business, I talk to my clients about under pressure, people do what comes naturally. So it doesn't surprise me that behaviors changed in both directions, you know, positively and negatively, because when we as humans get under pressure, Lorraine, whatever's our natural traits will come out. They'll come out more naturally. But in a cultural environment of people, because you have 700 people, it's important to stem the flow of negativity, because that really, look, we're in COVID, we're uncertain. There's no end date in sight. You know, this is back in March and April. We don't know what the journey is. We have our own personal challenges about ourselves and our family getting this and the health implications. We have our economic challenges, as you said, of paying our mortgages and our loans and living our life. And then we have our work challenges of, you know, how can we get a job or do a job? So, you know, what were the key tools you gave your management team? Because, as you said, some of them could step into leadership. Some were going to find it a bit more difficult to step in. What were the key things that you were talking to them about during the really extreme challenges of the early part of COVID?
I think, number one, we gave them a really clear framework of what to do and what not to do. So then practically, everybody knew the steps you needed to take practically. Right? So if everybody was following a formula and we were ticking the boxes here, that's the process covered.
Okay.
But I think the most important thing we gave them was an open door, so that we had open communication. As I said, we check in twice a day, and we still do every single day, collectively as a management team, and people know that they can bring to the table anything that's bothering them or anything that they can see on the ground that's going to impact them and their teams. So I think the tool was, I suppose, availability of the leadership team, and an absolute empathy for the challenges that they're facing on the ground. So that, and there is no right or wrong answer here, and everybody's got to do the best that they possibly can do, but they're not in this on their own. So there's a lot of people in our business, and we're there to support each other. It doesn't matter about your rank, your hierarchy. And so people definitely, I think, really felt, I suppose, our values as a company really come into life during the pandemic. And we lived what we always say our values would live. Like freedom, integrity, respect, innovation are our core values. We really brought them to life more so during the pandemic than ever, I think.
That's fantastic to hear. And the point about open communication for me is something that I've always believed in when I was running large organizations, was the more open the communication is, the better the organization. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time on with clients early on and organizations in the pandemic was the leadership must be very tight. They must be very tight together. So when the message comes out, there's a consistency, because there's so much ambiguity about this pandemic and, you know, in the external world. And what I'm very impressed with the fact that you walk the talk. That's probably the way I would describe it. Lorraine, that, many organizations talk the talk, and, but not every organization walks the talk. And, you talk about your values and you walk the talk of your values. I'm actually smiling by the fact that integrity is in there, which I love, obviously, which is part of your background in that sense. What was the biggest thing, looking back now today, that hasn't worked as well for you as you would have liked to work?
Gosh, I think managers of certain areas of our business not stepping up. Okay. So genuinely, because we've got totally different parts of our business, and I think that we've given lots of training and lots of development to people, but if they don't embrace that, and the training is on how to be a really good people manager and how to get the most of your people, if they don't embrace it, they really are doing their team a disservice. And last week, I had to give the bad news that we had to move one of our sets of people onto a 4-day week because of the environment they were in. And the managers really, they said, okay, well, you can give the news, you can give. So I gave them the news, but they said, right, well, when are you going to send that notification out? And I said, well, I'm not going to send the notification out. I said, this is your responsibility, guys. And I said, it's not because I don't want to, because I'm more than happy to do that, even though I'm not happy doing it. I said, but how would I feel if our owners sent me an email to say you're going on a 4-day week? And I said, and my manager hadn't the manners to talk to me to explain this was going to happen. Because that's exactly what you're asking me to do. You're asking me to bypass you and go directly to your team. And I think that will damage your relationship with your people. So eventually they realized, okay, that's not comfortable, and I'll do it. So they gave the news. But how they gave the news was nearly as damaging as giving the news, as I've since learned. Right? So I had an idea this might happen. Right?
Okay.
So in the end,
can I just interject? Okay. Yeah. Here's my prediction of what happened. Okay. That I wouldn't have done this, but Lorraine did it.
A little bit like that, Tim. Yeah. So what I had to do, like I sort of preempted, again, my gut was strong. This is not going to settle well, right? So instead of sending out emails lately, I've been actually doing videos, doing short video clips. And I'm talking to the camera saying, look at lads, this is where we're at. This is not comfortable. This is nice, but this is the reasons why we're doing it. So I think it was 2.5 minutes long, 3 minutes long video to explain to the team. So the managers delivered the news, and I said, as your managers will have told you now, unfortunately, this is the news, and this is the background, and this is the reasons why, and this is what's next. And, sign it off like, wishing them well, etc. And the amount of information, the amount of messages I've gotten back over the weekend to say, thanks for that, makes a lot of sense, appreciated. It has changed the tone in how the message has been received. And I've since sent that to the managers and said, guys, look at the impact here. And I'm not trying to say I'm a great one, I'm certainly not. Yes. But I'm saying, look at the power here. I've delivered the same message as you, but I've done it in a way that makes the people on the ground feel better about the message. And you're doing them no service by going down the negative route rather than the practical and the inspirational route. And that's really the way people want to be inspired now. They don't need to be any more deflated than this pandemic is doing. So, and
that's a very important point, that, what happens is when managers don't want to give messages, and this is not a nice message, you're on a 4-day week, it's just not a nice message. They dilute the message because it's just they're uncomfortable with it. Mm-hmm. And what people need is the clarity of the message and the reasoning behind the message is what your video clip did. But, again, in my experience, I've always said to managers that if you dilute the message and if you say, well, it was Lorraine did it, I wouldn't have done it now, but it was Lorraine did it, you've lost your credibility as the manager, because then they'll say, well, you have no role here. It's Lorraine makes every decision. And that's the challenge for managers, is to take responsibility. And what you've talked about in people development of your people, includes your management development, is about taking responsibility and being empowered for the good days and for the tough days. And I find, Lorraine, in my experience, managers are more happy with the good days, but are not as comfortable with the bad days, where leaders are comfortable in both days.
I'd absolutely agree. And there's it's a horrible position to be in, right? It's horrible. But it's funny how used you get to being in those positions as a leader. And especially during the pandemic, they're definitely becoming more frequent now than they have been before, and that's not a great thing either, that you're so used to managing bad news,
Yes.
but I think it's just part of life. And again, I think how we make people feel as leaders is so important, and leave somebody feeling accepting of something rather than being, confused by something has a fundamental impact on how they get on with their working lives and their home lives. And it's so important that we remember that in all of our communication.
I love that, Lorraine, because when I talk with people, I talk about dealing with the facts. There are facts that this pandemic has put in front of us economically in all of businesses, and in most businesses, I would say, because some businesses like retail have blossomed. But in general, majority of businesses have been affected in some way. And all businesses have been affected either positively or negatively. But it's about dealing with the facts and then respecting the emotions of the people that are hearing the facts. And in this case, it's a 4-day week, so there's an economic realization. But if you deal with it in a very factual way, you can inspire people because you're clear, you're factual, and you're giving the reasoning behind it. One of the things I say to leaders all the time in this pandemic is your job, Lorraine, I see, is to make sure you have a business to come back to. And your second job is to make sure that all the people that are there come back to your business when it's right for everyone to come back in a full. And that's not an easy space to find yourself in, is it?
Absolutely not. But that's exactly what it is. You're trying to balance the reality of today with the reality of what the future might not be, because you still have to build your business to survive this pandemic. So while individuals are really focused on their own personal circumstances, as a leader, you've got the collective to be responsible for. And it's not just the people, it's the environment, the business landscape that you have to nurture and make sure that is ready to come back to. So there's a little bit more on your plate than normal during these times.
And how do you handle that? I mean, obviously there's a strain on all of us as leaders in any environment, but particularly in a crisis. How have you found the strain and how have you handled it?
I think it's quite lonely as a CEO or an MD. It genuinely is, because I'm balancing, I suppose, the responsibility to our owners of delivering the bottom line. And then you're trying to balance the impact of this whole thing on people, and the challenges of having a strong gut is I feel the impact this has on people, and it really doesn't, it never leaves me, But I think I have a great husband, to be honest with you. He's just super. So I can't talk to my management team and my direct board, because sometimes there's just things you can't tell them, and at the end of the day, you don't want to worry them either. So my husband's ears are burnt off him, having conversations about what do you think they should do here. I have, actually recently joined a CEO network where we have peer-to-peer discussions, confidential discussions, that we can have conversations together on how to support each other without breaking any confidences. And I think, I always go back to my family, because at the end of the day, I'm running a business, but I will say I have to practice what I preach, and it's important that my home life is as positive as it could be. And the one benefit of COVID is that it's helped me step back and maybe not be as much of a workaholic as I was, and have more time at home with my family and my sisters and my mother and father. That's helped me come back to being more, I suppose, not back to basics, but it's definitely given me an appreciation of how good I have it, right? And I'm using that home life as a means to say, this will pass. This is just another work challenge that's come my way. Whereas my family will always be here, and I need to make sure that I'm investing as much in them as I am in my work family, to be honest with you. And that's a balance that I'm hoping I'm getting a bit better at.
And it's interesting about the loneliness. I spoke at a conference of CEOs about 2 years ago, and I said, being CEO is the loneliest place in the world. And just as you described, I said, you can't talk to your chairman because he expects you to have all the answers. In my case, it was a he. You can't talk to your management team because they expect you to have all the answers. I said, in my case, I talk to my wife, and she gives me, unbiased or completely biased love and tells me I'm doing everything right, which I'm not. And I actually said on the platform, if I had me as a CEO now as an executive coach, I'd have been a much better CEO, because I'd have someone to confide in, just to give me, unfiltered views of what I should be considering in that, because it's a very lonely place being at the top of the tree.
It really is. And sometimes it's lovely to see your team recognize that And you know what? This morning, I'll send it to you, right? One of my guys on the ground sent me a poem he wrote, and it was about the challenges of COVID. And when I get things like this through from the team, it actually is heartening, because it means that I've reached that person on the ground who's doing his job, but he feels comfortable enough to reach me back. And he's let me send on his poem, but I had to take his name off, etc.
Yep.
But, you know, the wording of the poem is just perfect for what we're going through at the moment. It talks about the challenges COVID is thrown at us, but that we have to keep our eyes open because there's still a lot of colour out there.
I love that. I love that.
It's fabulous. So that was a great start to my morning, because I've had a weekend of dealing with, you know, challenges, individual challenges after delivering the news last week and how that's impacting families. But then to get this message this morning from somebody on the ground really has brightened my day. And I suppose people shouldn't forget the impact that colleagues at every hierarchy in the organisation can have on a leader, and how much their support can mean to leaders as well. It can mean the world to them.
And that's what open communication, in my view, is really about. That it's a two-way street between the leader and the organisation, and vice versa. It's not one way, it's both ways. And that's a brilliant example there, Lorraine, of that. As we move into the, you know, sort of the fall of the year, what are your outlook? You said it's going to be a challenging year for you financially, obviously, as in your business. What's your outlook for the future at the moment, for you and for the organisation?
The outlook is really bright, and it has to be. It has to be, because there's no point in me going in with any other way. Because again, if I don't have a positive outlook for the organisation, how can I expect my people to behave in a manner that's positive? Right? But it is true, you know, the pandemic has brought challenges, but it has brought opportunities. So it has forced us to look at our business through different eyes. It has forced the people within our business to look at how they operate, and think about how to do things differently. And we're taking, as an example, the fact that everybody's using technology more and more now. That's an opportunity for the future. You know, people who were absolutely against using technology before now are using it as part of their day-to-day life. And our mantra as a business has always been people supported by technology. So I'm thinking this is a huge opportunity for us to actually step up our digital agenda in the future and to bring people on that journey, because it's empowering for those individuals to use technology and to show how confident and competent they can become when they use technology day to day as well. So a lot of the guys in our business may have been enrolled for 15 to 20 years. So they're used to doing things a certain way.
Yes.
So this is a way for them to, I suppose, to freshen up their skills. And I think that empowers them and how they feel personally and professionally. And I think that's a huge opportunity for us in the future. So like I have a line of sight that's positive for the business, regardless of the pandemic or not. And I'm going to hold that line, because otherwise there's just no point in us coming to work in the morning, to be honest with you.
The series is called The Mindset Shift. And obviously you've pivoted. You've talked about that earlier, about how many pivots you've made in different ways. Has your mindset grown throughout this pandemic?
I think I have a growth mindset. It's got me where I am today, and I actively seek that out in people when I'm trying to, you know, grow our organisation, right? Where my mindset has shifted is definitely more on my personal growth. And it's how I love my job. I love what I do, right? And it's so important to me, my work life. But I definitely have to keep the better balance that I have on my personal life as I move forward with my work life. And that's definitely something I'm more aware of. And I plan to walk the talk in my personal balance as well as my work.
Well, Lorraine, it has been an absolute really thrill for me to chat to you. I think your hard work, your integrity, your class has shone through in this. And you've definitely made me have a much brighter day from chatting to you. And I've no doubt you'll make the listeners have a much brighter day when they hear this. Lorraine, thank you so much indeed. And thank you for visiting the Mindset Shift series.
No, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys as well. It's been great. Right? It's great to actually stop and have a conversation as opposed to running all the time. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you for watching The Mindset Shift. For more episodes, check out www.talenthub.ie/the mindset shift.